He was just the guy who brought the food to the table, always polite, always on time, and always invisible. To most customers, he was just a waiter, someone you nodded at when your drink needed a refill. But behind that tired smile and crisp apron was a man with a secret, a dream no one saw coming. Every night after his shift, while others went home to rest, he stayed back, watching, learning, picking up everything from how orders were placed to how the numbers were managed in the back office. He wasn't just serving tables, he was studying the business, piece by piece. His co-workers didn't pay much attention. Some even joked he was wasting his time. After all, what could a waiter do? But he had a plan, and a promise he made to himself years ago. This wasn't just about climbing the ladder, it was about rewriting the rules entirely. This story isn't just about food or restaurants. It's about grit. It's about what happens when someone refuses to be defined by their job title. When you're underestimated long enough, you learn to move quietly and strike when no one's looking. What pushed him to risk everything? And how did he go from taking orders to giving them? The moment everything changed wasn't loud. It was quiet, unexpected, and it shocked everyone who thought they had him figured out. You won't believe what happened next. His name was Daniel. He started waiting tables at 19, fresh out of high school, with no big plans and no real direction. The restaurant was a small family-owned spot, busy, loud, and often understaffed. Daniel didn't mind. He showed up early, left late, and slowly became the guy everyone relied on. But while others clocked in and out, Daniel paid attention to the things most people ignored: inventory sheets, food waste, customer feedback, even the way the manager handled complaints. He didn't go to business school, he didn't come from money. But he had something different, a quiet hunger to learn. He asked questions, took notes, memorized supplier names, delivery schedules, and even how to read the profit margins buried in the paperwork. At night, he'd go home and read articles about restaurant management, startup stories, and how franchises worked. The more he learned, the more he started seeing gaps, things the owners could fix, ways they were losing money without even realizing it. Sometimes he'd suggest small ideas to his manager. Most were ignored. He was just a waiter, after all. That title stuck like glue. No one took him seriously, not yet. But then something happened, an opportunity that came out of nowhere. A failing location, a sudden sale, and Daniel, the quiet guy with the notepad and big ideas, saw a crack in the wall. The kind of crack only someone on the inside could see. But was he ready to step out of the shadows and take the risk of a lifetime? Success brought new challenges Daniel hadn't expected. As his restaurant chain began to grow, so did the pressure. With every new location came new staff, new suppliers, and new problems. The charm of the original spot was hard to replicate, and not every manager he hired shared his vision. A few places struggled with consistency, meals sent back, poor reviews online, and customer complaints that hurt more than he'd admit. The same people who once praised his story began to question if he'd expanded too quickly. At the same time, Daniel was dealing with something more personal. His parents, who had once doubted his choices, were now proud, but growing older and needing his help. Juggling the business while caring for family pulled him in two directions. Some nights, he stayed late in the office going over cost reports. Other nights, he sat in silence by his father's hospital bed, wondering if it was all worth it. Meanwhile, one of his early hires, someone who had stuck with him through the hardest days, started to feel overlooked. Promotions were handed to new people. Decisions were being made faster, with less input from those who'd helped build it from the ground up. Quiet resentment started to form within his original team. And then came another blow. A larger chain noticed Daniel's growing success and started opening similar restaurants in nearby neighborhoods, copying the menu, the look, even the brand colors. What started as a dream was now a battleground, and Daniel was right in the middle of it. The opportunity came with strings, more like chains. The struggling restaurant up for sale wasn't in great shape. It was losing money, the staff was burned out, and the neighborhood foot traffic had slowed down. Most people saw it as a sinking ship, but Daniel saw something else. A location with potential, a menu that just needed tweaking, a staff that needed leadership. He didn't have enough money to buy it outright, but he had saved every tip, every extra shift, every dollar he could scrape together. Still, it wasn't enough. So he took a gamble, one that left his friends shaking their heads. He borrowed from an old friend who believed in him. He maxed out a credit card. He put everything on the line. All for a broken-down restaurant that most people had already written off. The day he signed the papers, he wasn't smiling. He was terrified, but something inside him knew this was his shot. The first few weeks were brutal. Half the staff quit. Suppliers didn't trust him. Customers barely trickled in. He worked 16-hour days, cooking, cleaning, taking orders, fixing broken equipment. People started whispering, "He's in over his head. Told you it wouldn't work." Even some of his old co-workers, now watching from a distance, didn't think he'd last a month. But Daniel didn't flinch. He kept showing up. Every single day. He made changes. Quiet ones at first. A new lunch combo. Faster service. A cleaner dining room. The numbers weren't improving fast enough. And then something unexpected happened. Just when things started to look up, when a few regulars returned, and the kitchen finally ran without chaos, the twist came from a direction Daniel never expected. The original owner of the restaurant, the same one who had sold it off at a loss, suddenly reappeared. He had heard that the place was under new management, and more importantly, that it was starting to turn around. He showed up one afternoon, walked through the doors like he still owned them, and ordered lunch like nothing had changed. Daniel served him personally. They barely spoke, but the tension hung in the air like heavy steam from the kitchen. Word spread quickly. Customers noticed, staff whispered. And then, a few days later, Daniel got a letter. Legal sounding, complicated. It hinted that the sale hadn't been as clean as it seemed. That there were unresolved debts tied to the business. Debts that could threaten everything he was building. Suddenly, this wasn't just about keeping the restaurant open. It was about fighting to hold onto it at all. His dream, everything he'd worked for, was now tangled in something much bigger and far messier. The pressure tightened. Bills piled up. His team started to doubt him again. Was he in legal trouble? Was the restaurant going to close? Daniel tried to stay focused. He still believed in the place, in the vision. But with the clock ticking and more eyes watching, he knew, one wrong move now, and it could all fall apart faster than it started. Daniel didn't sleep much after that letter. He met with a lawyer, went through dusty paperwork, and uncovered the truth. The debts weren't technically his, but they were tied to the restaurant's name, which meant if he didn't act fast, creditors could shut him down. With barely enough time to react, Daniel made the boldest move yet. He rebranded the entire place overnight. New name, new logo, new paperwork. It wasn't just a restaurant anymore. It was his own business, from top to bottom. The risk was huge. Some customers were confused, even turned away. But most stayed. The staff, seeing his fight, stood behind him. And slowly, the numbers turned. The debt threats faded. The restaurant was finally in the clear. For the first time, Daniel stood in the dining room not as a waiter, not as a temporary owner, but as someone who had built something real. Just when things seemed settled, the unexpected twist came, not in court, not from a bill collector, but from a customer. A quiet man who'd been coming in every week for months. One night, he asked to speak with Daniel, said he owned a small chain of eateries in another state, said he'd been watching, impressed, and then he made an offer, a partnership deal to expand the brand, Daniel's brand. It wasn't just about saving a single restaurant anymore. It was about growing something far bigger than he ever imagined, all from someone they once called just a waiter. Daniel didn't say yes right away. He took a few days to think it through, sitting in the same corner booth where he used to roll silverware before his shifts. It wasn't just about money or success. It was about staying true to the reason he started all of this, to create a place where people felt seen, where the food was honest, and where no one was treated like they were just anything. Eventually, he agreed to the deal, but on his terms. He kept full creative control, made sure the staff from his original team had growth opportunities, and promised himself he'd never forget what it felt like to be underestimated. One location became 3, then 5. He didn't try to make every restaurant flashy or over-designed. Instead, he focused on good service, quality meals, and a culture where every team member mattered, from dishwashers to managers. People started asking about his story. Interviews followed. Articles were written with titles like From Waiter to Franchise Owner, and how one man flipped the industry script. But Daniel always smiled at the attention, keeping his head down and his apron close by, just in case someone needed help on the floor. In the end, it wasn't luck or timing that changed his life. It was watching closely when no one thought he was watching. It was working when no one was clapping. And it was believing, even when no one else did. Because sometimes the quietest ones build the loudest legacies.